Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for a few minutes of fun. As you can probably hear, I'm a little bit under the weather, so I might not talk constantly today, but I still wanted to have some fun. Mostly I don't need my voice when I'm crafting. So I'm going to have a little play with some Distress Embossing Glaze, so embossing powders, stencils, stencil flipping. And as often happens to me at this time of year, I'm being drawn to sort of rustiness and coppery patina type things. I said I was going to try and mention it once a month, and I think I've probably mentioned it twice in the year and a half since I started it. But let me just draw your attention to the link that is always below the videos to buy me a coffee if you are enjoying the content here and feel like you would like to make a contribution. That link is there and you can do it at any level you like. So I'm just saying it now, and then I'll probably forget for another 18 months to mention it. So backgrounds, fun with backgrounds. Whenever my mojo is low, a few backgrounds will usually get my juices flowing. So I've got a bunch of distress spray stains and a few oxide sprays around. I've got some ink pads around and ink blenders. I've got obviously these distress embossing powders. I've got the Speckled egg, Salvaged Patina and bundled sage here. So what I'm aiming to do is to create contrasts between the resist areas, so using a resist with the powders, and then rusty inkiness in between, and we'll see how we go. I'm going to play. That's what I'm here to do. These are manila tags. As always, I'm afraid it's no good asking me where I get them. I used to buy them in bulk from a UK craft store that has since gone out of business. When I run out of this box, I'm going to be as desperate as the rest of you to find a good source of tags that won't break the bank, that are a lovely smooth surface that really works and helps me play. So let's see. Very simple process, essentially. I'm going to either spray or ink through some of these stencils. I've picked a few favourites that have a decent balance between space and detail. And yeah, I think I'll start with some ink blending, because that's a nice controlled thing, and then we'll probably get messier later. So let's start by putting on a few bits of blue and green. I've got broken china. I've got cracked pistachio. One of the things to bear in mind about the Distress Embossing Glazes is that they are transparent, in fact, basically, so that the colour you put underneath them is going to make a difference to the end result. So if I ink in broken china and glaze it with Salvaged Patina, or if I ink in cracked pistachio and glaze it with Salvaged Patina, I'm going to get a different colour in each of those goes. One of the things with this is keeping the ink moist enough to catch the powder. It should be fine. But as you can see, I'm putting on a bit of peeled paint, a bit of broken china through these beautiful faded diamond patterns. And then I think I'm going to go with a full-on, since it's here, Salvaged Patina powdering. And you'll see, I mean, you should see that where it's over the green, it's one colour, and where it's over the broken china, you'll get a slightly different colour. What I might do is do a bunch of this and then heat emboss them all together, because otherwise I'm going to be constantly turning on and off the camera in order not to blast your ears with the heat gun. So I might emboss one on camera and then leave you be. So we will, if we get to some spraying, we'll also do some stencil flipping, but I just want to get a bit of embossing on the go to start with. Let's have another tag. So I've tried to put that one out of the way so that I don't knock the powder off it in the meantime. That's just one thing to be aware of. I sort of want to be a bit more organised about my workspace here so that I'm not using the same blending tool for everything. I don't mind using it for a few things. Okay, let's get on a bit of actual salvaged patina here, because that's a lovely vivid colour. So just putting this through some of these decorative crosses. Let's have another bit of green. I do like a nice green in my coppery patina playtime. And maybe we'll put in a bit of cracked pistachio as well. I think for that I might use the broken china. That's a sort of bluier greeny colour than the peeled paint, which is a full-on bit of broken china over that. I mean, this by itself is already nice, and one could use clear embossing powder at this point. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Clear embossing powder over that would also give you a look at all those colours that are going on, but I'm going to go for something a bit more full on, and I am going for a bit more of that salvaged patina. You'll notice what I brilliantly did there was go over the edge of my piece of paper and put some of it on the mat. So at the moment that's quite full on, because the powder, when it's still powder, is not as transparent as once I heat it. Once I heat it, you'll see that that starts to disappear a bit. Good, so I'm going to switch powders on the next one. Going to go over to maybe the speckled egg. Love the speckled egg. I'm just going to give up on that little bit of powder. Not in the mood today to try and sweep up tiny bits of powder. Other days I might, but not today, Josephine. Right, so I think I might, since this one's here, I might go for another go with that. So this will be sort of a softer, subtler embossing glaze, because the speckled egg is a much less vivid powder. But I'll do a sort of similar combination of inks so that we'll be able to make a direct comparison. I might go for pairs of what I've got here in any case, because I think that's quite a nice way to be able to both compare and then make pairs of tags later, which, as you know, I love to do. Once upon a time, many eons ago, I mentioned the squeaky noise that you can hear in the background, which is some of the shelves on my table, which when I'm doing this vigorous action, decide to join in and dance around and squeak. And I said I was gonna deal with that and make them go away. And of course, that hasn't happened. So I'm being more vivid with the ink. I've got more layers of ink on that. But as I said, this is a slightly softer look of powder. So that's the speckled egg. Plenty of it on, and then you can just kind of dance it around so that it's been over the whole tag. Make sure it's hit everything. Little tap off if things are... Well, that's interesting. Why is it clinging to that bit of tag? Let's see if a good flick will get rid of most of it. Well, I wonder if there was something damp. I mean, it'll be quite interesting, because having those little flecks of powder in between will mean that it's got a really interesting bit of powderiness in between the precise imagery. But I don't think I want all of it. That'll be okay. Let's do another fadey one so that we're working in pairs, and then I might emboss and add some ink so that you... Oh no, it probably is better to... So let's put the lids on these for now. Don't want them drying out. Not that I think they will. It's not a very dry environment here, but there are some climates where it's advisable to take those off. I've done it too soon, because I wanted to do another of these before I heat emboss. Sooner or later, you see, where I'm putting these to be safe, something's going to happen to them, and then I'll be sad. So I'm going to heat emboss sooner rather than later. Right, let's go nicely blue on this. As you can see, my blue and green sponges are now all mixed up. All kinds of blues and greens on all of them. And because of that, I'm sort of minded to put in a bit of another blue. This is Tumbled Glass, which is a much paler blue. Oh, and that, yeah, see, this is why you don't mix your sponges. That just gave me some more of the... I do have sponges for every colour, actually. I just can very rarely be bothered to swap them in and out all the time. If you're bothered about stencils moving around, you can tape them down with a little bit of masking tape along one side. I generally can't be bothered with that. I don't mind if there's a little bit of movement and a little bit of shadowing. Let's have just a bit more broken china through there. So that's a nice move through blue and green. And this one is getting, what did I say, speckled egg. Okay, let it dance around, let it just hit everywhere. Let's see if this one also clings. Oh, in a couple of places. Interesting. Maybe my tags have got a little bit of dampness on them. Don't know why that's happening. Or a bit of static cling. That can also happen with embossing powder. But if it's static cling, the flick usually gets the job done. Right, now I will put some lids back on. That's what I meant to do. And maybe do a bit of heat embossing. So let's grab one of these right away. So you can see the powder is on there. As I start to heat, you'll spot those moments where it suddenly starts to melt. This is the Ranger heat gun. So it's not officially an embossing gun, it's a general craft heat tool. If you use an embossing gun, then things will heat up probably a little more quickly. If you go a little bit from behind, you can sometimes get things started more quickly. And the key is to keep holding it somewhere where you can see it in the light. I don't know if you can see those bits where it has now embossed. I can see that there's that lovely glossy resist going on. So all I need to do is make sure I go over the whole tag until I've got that lovely shine across the whole powdered area. So I'm not going to do all of that on camera. You don't need to be there for the whole of that, but just take a look. Holding in one position is what will get the melt really going, particularly if you're not working with a heat gun, an embossing gun. I'm going to say tool, not gun, just because. So can you see that taking? Grand. That's what you're looking for. That's when it's melted. Right, I'm going to finish off these 4 and then we'll move on to some more. So I've got 4 fully heat embossed tags there. Lots of shimmering resist waiting to go. One thing people often ask me is, when I'm using Distress Inks, can I do that with Distress Oxides? And the answer is yes. Basically, any technique you can do with Distress Inks, you can also do with Distress Oxides. It's not going to end up looking the same because oxides are opaque and chalky. Distress inks are translucent and glowy. When they're under embossing glaze, the embossing glaze is going to impart a glow to the oxides. So yes, anything you can do with Distress Inks, you can also do with oxides. So, but also just try it is always my other answer. Give it a go. I think I might want a few little dotty bits. I'm not going to cover the whole tag this time, just to prove what I've just been saying. No, actually, I'm not gonna do that because it means I need all new sponges. Not today, Josephine. Not in the mood. Because although I will mix greens and blues and all sorts on the same sponge, what I prefer not to do is mix up oxides and inks, because that will cause an issue on the blending sponge. Because if you start putting oxides into Distress Inks, the oxides are always going to win out. So that's a sort of partial, and I'm going to do another one here straight away because that's the simplest way to just get things done. Might make this one Salvaged Patina as opposed to, let's see, and maybe just the odd dot elsewhere. Nice. Okay, so straight on with the embossing powder. I think I might just stick with the glowy one at the moment, because what I like about that is it gives you a good contrast with what's going to come later. If I've got a nice vivid blue-green, I might do a little bit with the bundled sage, because that's going to be nice to have some greenier ones. Let's take off the bulk of that. Let it just dance around. So as you see, I did get some oxide ink pads out, but as I say, it will just involve changing over my sponges, and yeah, I'm not really in the mood for that today. If you're somebody who wants to know more about the difference between oxides and distress inks, distress oxides, either head over to Tim Holtz's amazing fund of information over on his website and his YouTube channel, or I will link down below, if I remember, to the video where I did a lot of comparing of the two. Well, what do I want to do now? Oh, so there's a reason I'm holding off, is that I wanted to do a bit of stencil flipping, didn't I? So one could do that using the ink blending tool, because there will be a little bit of ink on here, but you'll end up with a lot more possibility if you use a spray, because when you flip, I'll link the stencil flipping video as well, that gives you a lot more moisture for your powder to stick to. I'm just thinking I might distress some of these a little bit, just knock a bit of that powder off, because I think that might be quite fun. So that's just something that's occurred to me in the moment. Not doing that in any very scientific way. So if I have a little spritz through here, let's see, let's go Salvaged Patina, like so, and maybe a little bit of broken china, like so. So this is going to be a much messier kind of affair. What else have we got here? I sort of want something a bit greeny. Evergreen Bough. That's very green. So I'm then going to immediately turn that over, flip the reverse onto here, use a bit of paper towel to press that down. This is plenty wet, so I'm not going to worry about getting powder straight onto that. This is going to be potentially tougher to get the powder to stick to, but I think we're fine. Shall I stick? I could do a mop up, but again, a couple of fluid milliliters of ink. Milliliters of ink. Shall I stick to the same? I might go a bit green. So this is bundled sage, Distress Embossing Glaze, just because we've got lots of blue going on already, lots of that. So this might give us something a bit different. I've got a lot more fluid on the tags this time, so the dancing around is just going to need to be a little bit gentle till the powder is on, and then the powder will help to hold that in place. I do want to give that a good flick, because I want to get those spaces in between nice and clear for what we're going to be doing later. Let's let that take a little dance around. Should be good. Yeah, grand. Okay, so I've now got another 4 to emboss, so maybe I should do that. Let's tip that back in. This is going to be one of those days where it's dangerous, and I'm going to find myself turning the video off when I think I'm turning it on, and then filming myself doing the in-between bits instead of the main bits. Grand. So I'm going to emboss those 4, and then I think we've probably got enough to have a little play with something else. Or maybe I'll do one more flip, but maybe not on camera, because you've seen that now. Back shortly. Grand. So I got myself another flip out of that stencil before I cleaned the ink off. I gave a little spritz of water, flipped again, and so that got me 3 for that one. And as I was saying, you don't have to be using Distress Embossing Glaze for this. I'm gonna do just a couple with clear embossing powder to prove that that can be done, or any coloured embossing powders that you've got, opaque or otherwise. Any embossing powder is going to create a resist for ink, And for this, because I really want some sort of bluey, pale bluey ones, I'm gonna get out these Distress Oxide sprays for a sort of lighter patina look on a couple of last Spritz and Flick, no, Stencil and Flip versions. So, oh hello, my Speckled Egg Oxide Spray nozzle needs cleaning. I wonder if I can get a, no, I'm not going to get through. Okay, so we'll go tumbled glass. I must do that. Oh, that's very blue. So with that, I'm going to mix in some, have I got it nearby? Speckled Egg. I've got Speckled Egg ink. That'll be interesting. And it's almost empty. Of course it is, because I adore my Speckled Egg. Come on, there you are. So just to get myself something a bit less blue. Oh, it really is nearly empty. I think I've got another bottle somewhere. Okay, this is going splendidly well. Tumbled glass, are you there? There you are. Okay, let's go tumbled glass. Spray stain. So this is definitely blue for this one, in amidst my greeny greenness. Flip it over. Oh, hello, very blue, but fun to have. And I think I'm probably going to get a double flip out of this as well. So let's grab another tag. This is why I need to find a new tag source. I love the Ranger tags, they're great. But as you can see, at the rate I go through them, that's simply not going to be an option money-wise. There we go. Because I like to play. This is what gives me joy. And in the long run, if that's what I have to do, so be it. Because I you know, I spend the money on the things in life which give me joy. I need a dry piece of paper to do my powders, because they're just going to stick to this one. Let's pop it on there. This is going to be fun to have these blues though. Let's go with the clear embossing powder. I could absolutely do your regular game with the Distress Embossing Glazes for this, but as I say, I really want to preserve those blues without giving them a tint of turquoise for this go. Okay, let's let it do a little dance around. So that's the Wow clear embossing powder. I do also have Ranger clear, but this just happens to be the one that's out. Yeah, I now really am running out of space on the desk. But that's what a good play session does. That's what a good play session does. This is the ultra high, and I'm noticing that it really is. It's quite chunky powder, and it's giving me a really raised emboss already, even before I get the heat tool onto it. Let's pop this back. Come on, in the pot. There it goes. Not too bad. This looks like it might want a bit of mopping up. So let's just grab an extra tag, give it a little spritz. So this is part, what did we end up with? Tumbled glass oxide and tumbled glass spray stain, I believe, is on the mat. I can hear little granules of powder as well. That's just a really lovely side effect mop up. I could also emboss that, which will give me a, oh, well, let's do it. Let's do it. That's going to look amazing. Shall we do it in clear, or shall we do it in, let's do it in Salvaged Patina again, because that is the powder I've got most of going on. So in terms of a comparison, that's exciting. There we go. That's going to give us a really random organic kind of a look, which is going to be fantastic. So mop up and emboss. That's going to be gorgeous when it's got rust over it. Very good. So we're nearly there. I think I want to do one more go with this beautiful cobblestone stencil, because I've only got, oh well, I have got 3 of those, haven't I? No, let's have one more go. Okay, so you are for powdering, you're for heat embossing, you're for heat embossing, you're for heat embossing, and it's you. I want 2 more tags. Oh, they're hiding under the powdery ones. Of course they are. Eesh. Come on. So this is going to give me backgrounds to play with for ages. I'm going to have lots and lots of delightful times playing with these. I think I'm going to go with a bit of green this time. Let's hope that the bundled sage oxide... Oh, well, you know what I didn't do? Clean the nozzle there. That's what stops them blocking up in the long run. So let's get some bundled sage down here. That's a lovely green. That's going to do nice things oxidey wise. And maybe we do that with a bit of this tumbled glass spray stain. So you can see I'm mixing and matching my mediums, and that's fine. That's fun. That's all good. We're going to get a third tag again, aren't we? We're going to get an extra flip out of this. There's that. There's my first flip. So I could do one of these with the clear embossing, and I could do one with another Distress Embossing Glaze, just for fun. Didn't quite get the side of that bit of tag, but that's good. It's going to have a rusty edge, because wherever the embossing powder isn't, there's going to be rustiness in a minute when we get on to the next stages. Grand. Let's see. I think I'm going to put Salvaged Patina on here. No, that's Speckled Egg. Well, yeah, let's do it. Speckled Egg on this one. La la la. And at this point I'm moving fairly rapidly because I don't want those to dry too much. I want to be able to get to them while the ink is still wet. I don't think it's going to be a problem, especially that one, because that's plenty wet. Got another mop up happening on the mat underneath. You can see it. Well, or what I could do if I wanted that not to be a rusty edge but to be an inky edge, I could just dip that into that bit of ink. And I think these two are going to go clear again, just because I'm quite curious about this ultra high mode of embossing powder. So get that on there, that on there. Let's get most of that covered. Yeah, that's good. A good tap. You can maybe hear that coming off because there's plenty. And then give that a little dance around so that we make sure it gets everywhere we want it. Shovel a bit more on. Shovel a bit more on just to make sure we're fully covered. Very good. And then I will do some heat embossing and be back again. So those are all my resists, all melted and shimmering and ready to play. The next stage is going to be adding a little bit of rustiness, and then there's a sort of final flourish of adding a bit of patina oxidization. So I said that this was going to provide backgrounds for days, months, even years. That quite often happens. But it's also, I love working in multiples because it gives me a chance to experiment and develop as I go. Something I enjoy, I'll do a bit more of. Something I didn't enjoy, I can set aside because I've got plenty more to play with. And with all of this, as you've already seen, I can use ink pads, oxide pads, or ink sprays, oxide sprays. Use what you've got. This next stage you can also do with either ink pads or with sprays. So let's start with some ink pads. I've got Vintage Photo, I've got a bit of Crackling Campfire, I've got Rusty Hinge, I've got Gathered Twigs on standby, and I've got a couple of oxide pads hanging around as well, but I'm going to start with these. Let's get some rustiness on. So this is Rusty Hinge, and I'm just going to blend it over. And as you can see, that resist is doing what the resist says it's going to do, and resisting. You can, afterwards, with just a damp piece of kitchen towel, you can kind of reinstate even more firmly the resist, the shine of the resist, especially after you've inked over it. You can get a bit more kind of life back into it. You can tell my brain's not really working today, can't you? I think that's Crackling Campfire going on, which always gives you an incredible boost of vibrant colour. I think I want a bit of a gathered twigs. I might even get the walnut stain out, because I kind of like my rust nice and dark. So with all of this, you can also apply other things we've done in the past. You can absolutely have a little spritz and flick of this when you're done. There's a bit of oxide here. I'm just interested in that because what it gives me is some opacity. So I'm going to have an oxide sponge out ready to play as well. And that's just going to give me a slightly different look round in that corner. So that's a blended version with the sponge. I do want some more, even. Where's ground espresso is pretty dark. Scorched timber, if I want to go really, really dark, is my other option. Where's my dark brown? There we are. And the more you sort of layer up over here, the more exciting those layers of colour are going to become underneath. So I can now go in for a little spritz and flick. And I can do that with water, or I could also do that with an ink spray. So for instance, if I got myself a bit of pumice stone, just unscrew the lid and just have a little flick of a little bit of ink down onto there. And then I'm going to do a little kind of spritz over the top and a little spritz and flick. So at this point, I'm just playing. I'm just having a little go at allowing that ink to do the thing it does best, which is react with water. Let it go for a little trip. You can probably see that the adding of that water has already allowed some of that shine to come back to that embossing resist. And then of course kitchen towel is also going to be an ally, because that's going to add to my texture. And I think you can probably see where that's drying, you're getting really good effects and impacts. I'm going to leave that to carry on drying by itself and do you a little spritzy version of something so that you can see that happening. I want to pick up a bit more of that liquid over the emboss. You can always come back and refresh the emboss. That's really funky. Good, let's have you up and do just a little spritz of, what do we got here? Same sort of colours. Let's go a little bit of Rusty Hinge. Ooh, that's good. A little bit of Vintage Photo. Are you around? Where are you, Vintage Photo? Sure, I got you out. Well, let's go Pumice Stone while we're here, because it's... Oh, there's another one. Almost empty. But that's goes on perfectly well like that. Look at that. That's inventive mixed media playtime. And then what I might do is a little bit of Crackling Campfire. Not sure I didn't pick up the Crackling Campfire last time. Oh no, that's definitely Crackling Campfire. And I could have sworn I had Vintage Photo. There it is. A little bit of Vintage Photo. So there's going to be some mopping up to be done in a minute. Let's let that do a little bit of playtime. So again, just some little spritzes of water will help that move around. Tipping, tilting, all of that is going to get you movement. Just look at how that's moving around the resist. So cool. So much fun. I'm just going to encourage a little bit of that depth of colour down into this corner as well. And I'm going to come back later to pick up some of the ink off that resist. You can see the tiny little droplets where it's resisting, but at the moment I want that to just keep doing what it's doing because it's glorious. I might knock it back for a bit more texture. Oh, and I might do a little flick just to keep it moving. It's good to have a space somewhere to one side where you can leave things to dry, she said, looking around her in hopes that one might spring to her attention. That's looking gorgeous. yeah, you're going to get messy fingers with this. There's no two ways about it. Let's pop that down on there for now and let that zoom. So this, I'm just going to see if I can pick up quite a lot of that colour. For instance, let's go in like this. Pick up some of that because there's no need to waste it. We've got all these tags here looking for ink. And then you can always give that a little, that's almost the best rusty one so far. That's fabulous. A little spritz of maybe Crackling Campfire because I'm enjoying that vivid red at the moment. And then maybe just a couple of flicks of something like, so here's some fun. So here's what I was talking about, the final sort of delight of a bit of oxidization loveliness is to just flick a bit of Distress Oxide of one of these pale blues and greens into the mix, and then you're going to get that gorgeous contrast of the chalky patina. So I'm coming back to this sprayed one and I'm just going to flick a bit of that around again. And if you do this while the tag is still wet, that's going to kind of meld into what's going on. And you can also come back and do it when the tag is much drier, and then you're going to get a real presence of that oxidized loveliness. That's all good. I might come back and do some ink blending over these later, but for now I really need to set up somewhere for them to dry. Back shortly. I'm back and in the midst of some more mopping up from that last lot of ink. So absolutely nothing wrong with just allowing that to start the job. Let's go with this. This was the mop-up tag, so we might as well carry on with the mop-up process. Allowing it to pick up some of that colour. And, oh, that's nice. I'm going to add more layers and depth to that colour in a minute. Let's grab some onto one of these. Oh, that, I can feel powder on there, but not to worry. I can feel that there's something that didn't quite get heat embossed, but that's fine because the last thing I want is a perfect look. I really want these things to have a weathered gnarliness to them. I'm not interested, in fact, rust and decay. Why would you be interested in having it all perfect and beautiful? That's not what rust is about. I feel like I want something a bit darker on these, so I'm going to have a little spray of gathered twigs, maybe across all three. There we go. That saves time and effort, doesn't it? I mean, look at the excitement of that resist. It's so much fun. Sorry, I'm just taking the gathered twigs down to have a spray on the ones that I've put down to dry. Just because I'm enjoying the depth of that colour. That's really scrumptious. So if I let those dry, I could then do a little bit of ink blending, or I can just, why not? It's here. Why don't I just go straight in? Wowza. Look at that. So this is the fun of playing. Yes, that ink sponge is now deeply wet because it's interacting also with the wet ink spray on here. But look at how that is allowing me to just explore as I go and see what I get. So over this bit of resist, I'm not going to be able to get much rustiness at all. So that's going to be a really lovely bit of coppery patina. What I can put onto there, I might get an oxide ink to take on it, but what will definitely take on it is an acrylic paint. So what I could do is spatter with a bit of, where's my much loved sea glass, Paper Artsy sea glass acrylic paint, spatter brush. So over that embossed resist, ink it's going to resist, paint you're going to be able to get to take over the top of it. So again, this is mixed media. This is what it is. It's playtime, and you can see that paint is mixing with the wet ink. It's all scrumptious fun. There are no rules. There are no, oh, have I done this right? You've done it right if it makes you happy. In fact, arguably, you've even done it right even if it doesn't make you happy, because you're learning something, you're playing, you're discovering possibilities. I'm going to layer some ground espresso over some of the edges here to just build that colour. Yeah, and I think it's time those go, and little spritz and flick, because that's going to keep that sense of movement, keep that sense of playfulness for the ink. Might send that on a little run. No, I mean, look at the glory of that. I sort of want that to travel a little bit, so I'm just going to help it with a bit of water. There you go. That's how that moves. That's scrumptious. Going to let that dry. More. So you can see I'm playing. I really, really am. This is joyous playtime, and accidental delight is really the name of the game. That, wow. So let's pop that down. Let's pop that down. Now we've got lots more to mop up here. Look at this. Scrumptious. That's ground espresso over there. What should we go? Let's get another view on the go. So this is one of the ones with the clear embossing powder, and I have a feeling it didn't entirely stick everywhere. So I'm expecting this to be really, really quite distressed and interesting. But it's doing okay. So let's mop up a bit more of this. Maybe onto, oh, let's have you. Have we done a cross yet? Can't remember. Yes, we have. So this is just mop up while I can. Once I've got everything I think I can get. That's a generalized rusty color, because that's just mixing what happened to be on the mat. Let's pick up some more of it if we can, so as not to waste it as much as anything else. That's fine as a starting point. So now I think I've got about everything I can get from there. Just trying to limit how messy my hand's getting. Oh look, I mopped up the sea glass as well. Can't be helped. Right, so with these, I'm going to layer in some inking, I think, just as straight on like this. Let's go with that Crackling Campfire. Goodness me, that's an amazing colour. And, you know, this time of year, autumn, copperiness, rustiness, that Crackling Campfire comes out a lot. I really like it in conjunction with Vintage Photo Oxide. I think that can give you a really good effect. No idea where my oxidey sponge went. I think it was you. Because I like that sort of chalky oxidized patina that you get with that. And I think it works really well with the Crackling Campfire to give you a rustiness. So that's Vintage Photo Oxide and Crackling Campfire ink, Distress ink. I also again want a bit of dark going on, so I'm going to grab that ground espresso and my dark brown sponge and layer up some more colour. I'm loving these speckledy bits. So that was my suspicion with that on one of my secondary mop-ups. I think the powder didn't quite hold, but as a result I've got this amazing bit of gnarliness going on with powder in sort of all sorts of places. That's all quite fun so far on those three. I feel like I want a bit more movement, so I'm going to add a little bit of Spritz and Flick water, and with that we might do the completely traditional Spritz and Flick to start with. Let it sit there for a moment, let the ink get picked up into those water droplets, and then I can come over with paper towel and just pick up those little splatters. Then maybe come in with a bit of rusty Hinge spatter. That's going to do nice things. Maybe something darker as well. That's Gathered Twigs. Might give us something quite nice down in this corner. Through there. Contrasting with the Crackling Campfire up there. give those a little spritz, let them do a little bit of playing. Off they go. So as soon as you've got a bit of liquid on there, that ink will move and it'll do interesting things. Might come in with some spritzed Crackling Campfire just for a bit of fun. I love it against those resists. It's delicious. But it's quite full on, so I might do a direct mix with that's Vintage Photo. So that's now doing quite interesting things. Again, let it go for a ride. Ooh. See, as the Vintage Photo and the Crackling Campfire did that together, both those colours came into their own with that little bit of movement. That's all very nice. And into it, I want to put the dynamism of a little bit of oxide spatter, so that again we're going to get those little moments of oxidization. Before I do that, because I don't want it to blend in completely, remember I said if you apply it when it's completely wet, it's just going to kind of merge with what's going on. I want a bit of merging, but I also want some places where it's going to hold its own. Nice and wet, lots of lovely ink there to pick up in a minute. Loving this little dribble here, loving those little spotlets there. So with this, again, I'm going to unscrew the top and just go for a little flick of chalky oxidization to just add into the mix. And as well as this is bundled sage, but I think I want a little bit of something a bit bluer, so I've got tumbled glass here as well. The oxide lives in the powders at the bottoms of these. That's why you need to shake the oxide. You don't need to shake a Distress spray stain because there's nothing that needs mixing back in. So you can see that is still doing quite a lot of merging, but oh my goodness, it's good merging. Really want a little bit to mix with these little droplets down here. There we go, that's good. Some of the ones down on the mat should be a little drier by now. Yes and yes. So onto those, I now have the option to put some oxide and have it stay put. So again, a little bit of tumbled glass. There it is. See how those dots just stay there? A little bit in here. And I think I want a bit of the bundled sage as well. And here's where I can unscrew my not working speckled egg one and do this same thing. Now, of course, it's the operation of water that allows oxides to get oxidy. So I'm just going to give a little spritz of water to those dots so that they can get properly chalky down here on the mat. And then I'm going to leave them to it again. Off you go. Can you see that amazing chalkiness in the midst of glowing ink? Just scrumptious. So we've got the shininess of the resist, we've got the chalkiness of those little splats, and we've got the glorious depth of colour from the Distress inks. I'm just going to pick a little bit of that up, a little bit of that up. Grand, that's another 3 for drying. I will, of course, be this distressed one. Just look at those spatters of resist in amongst the rusty finish. Magic. It's autumn galore on the mat here. I'm going to keep mopping, spraying, spritzing, flicking, and then I will at the end dive in so that you can see a close-up of some of the incredible textures here. I'm not going to say farewell now because I might do a little bit of chatting when that happens. See, I knew there'd be something else I wanted to say before I went. One of the reasons I really love doing this with the stencil flipping is that I love that you get somewhere there's loads and loads of rust and only a little bit of the resist. And I love that there are some where there's loads and loads of resist and only a little bit of rust in between. So you can see here I've still got beads of ink on the surface of that while it's drying in the background. And as I said, you just give that a little wipe and back comes your glorious, glorious resist. So there's still quite a lot of drying going on. One can absolutely come back in and add extra inking later on if I want to create extra depth around the edges of here once it's completely dry, or while it's still doing its thing. I've been, as I was before, I've done little spritzes or sprinkles of the Distress Oxides. So here's that speckled egg that didn't want to spritz anymore, but look what it can still give me in terms of little oxide bits of magic on the surface or in between. Yeah, fun, fun, fun. Really, really, really. But yeah, expect to end up with messy fingers and a messy desk and all of those things. So I'm going to clear up and zoom in. As I said before, if you are enjoying the content here and want to help Words and Pictures to carry on doing what I do, then yes, the link for Buy Me a Coffee will down in the description below the video, along with the ingredients we've used today, and links to any videos that I can remember are going to be useful for feeding into the things we've had to play with today. Thank you so much, as always, for your company and for the generosity of those of you who already buy coffee on a regular basis, support Words and Pictures as creative supporters. All of that makes this journey so much more fun, as do your amazing comments and the lovely feedback you leave down below. I always try to answer questions. The last few days I've been away teaching in Germany, and that's where I caught the cold, I think. It was either on the workshop or on the trains. But yeah, so bear with me as I catch up with comments from the last few days, but I hope you've enjoyed today's rusty patina game playing. Thanks so much for your company, and happy crafting all. Always a sign of a good time.